I joked about this, but I really would have loved to begun the dialogue in this first scene in the trailers for other movies, just to make people realize what was coming.
Did you know there are more people with genius IQs living in China than there are people of any kind living in the United States?
That can't possibly be true.
It is.
When I read the script, this first scene not only kind of was a great foundation for the character of Mark Zuckerberg, I'll be very careful to say that, but it also sort of set up the movie and how the movie should be taken, that it was going to be about semi-important things and self-effacing, and that it was going to be about this kind of pace. I'd like the first scene of a movie to inform the audience as to how much they have to pay attention. And this was definitely one of them. You know, as you read it in script form, it's probably 9 or 10 pages. That's pretty balls out way to start a movie. I gotta give it to Aaron.
World-class athletes. And a second ago, you said you liked guys who were cool, so I assumed you had met one.
I guess I just meant I like the idea of it, you know, the way a girl likes cowboys.
Okay.
Should we get something to eat?
Would you like to talk about something else?
No.
In the casting of this scene, it was this is one of the sides that we kind of allowed to leak out because we wanted to cast as wide a net as possible to look for actors to play Mark.
Which one?
I think we were probably 2 or 3, maybe as many as 4 weeks into the kind of looking, you know, turning over rocks and seeing who was available and seeing who was out there. And one of the things in trying to cast a 19 to 25-year-old lead is that you don't have to find somebody who's made 30 movies. You can find people who've made 2 or 3 movies. And so there was a process of really seeing a lot of films I hadn't seen before and a lot of independent films that had teenage actors in them. And I remember I had seen Squid and the Whale and I had seen The Education of Charlie Banks, and I felt I knew what Jesse was, and I felt that there was something about his sweetness that I thought we could do without as Zuckerberg. Not to say that Zuckerberg isn't sweet, because I think in some of the videotapes that I've seen of him, you know, he's, you know, gregarious and charming, but I felt like, you know, that I had this 10-page scene in my hand that I was looking for something, and I was looking for somebody who could just come out of the gates and be relentlessly who he is. And this quick time of an audition ended up on my computer, and I turned it on and I watched Jesse Eisenberg. I think he did 2 takes of this scene, and I just thought, wow, like that's pretty undeniable. And I remember dragging Aaron into my office and saying, just watch this. And he looked at it and he said, well, our job's done. And, you know, it was really a compliment to Jesse that he was so, I mean, it was just, he basically did this.
You would do that for me?
We're dating.
Okay. Well, I want to try and be straightforward with you and let you know that we're not anymore.
What do you mean?
We're not dating anymore, I'm sorry.
Is this a joke?
No, it's not.
You're breaking up with me?
You are going to introduce me to people I wouldn't normally have the chance to meet. What is that supposed to mean?
Wait, settle down.
What is it supposed to mean?
Erica, the reason we're able to sit here and drink right now is because you used to sleep with the door guy.
The door guy, his name is Bobby. I have not slept with the door guy. The door guy is a friend of mine, and he's a perfectly good class of people.
And Rooney was I was looking for Catherine Ross from The Graduate. I was looking for the one that got away. And we'd seen a lot of really smart, pretty young things. And we had seen them be defensive, and we'd seen them push back against Mark in this first scene. And I didn't think anybody did it with the kind of sharpness that she was both trying so hard to let it pass, and then finally it just got to be too much. And then she's so capable in her subsequent vivisection.
Sufficiently impressed with my education.
I'm sorry I don't have a rowboat, so we're even.
I think we should just be friends.
I don't want friends.
I was just being polite. I have no intention of being friends with
I'm
you.
under some pressure right now from my OS class, and if we could just order some food, I think we should be.
Okay, you are probably going to be a very successful computer person. You're gonna go through life thinking that girls don't like you because you're a nerd. And I want you to know from the bottom of my heart that that won't be true. It'll be because you're an asshole.
There was a piece of music that was in the script that Aaron had talked about, a track that he wanted to hear here. And it didn't work for me, but you get into that thing where it's like, music is such a personal thing. So one person hears one thing, another person hears a completely different kind of mood when they hear something. And I had in mind an Elvis Costello song I wanted to use, Beyond Belief. And everybody was sort of trying to talk me out of it because they felt it was too much my generation and not the generation that we were talking about in the movie. And people were polite, but they were definitely aghast. And I'd cut the original sequence, or we'd played with Beyond Belief in this original title sequence. And Trent Atticus Ross sent us this track. It's actually track number 7. It was just a series of sketches of different moods that they had in mind for the movie somewhere. And they didn't really have a place for it. But I heard it and I thought, that's so stunning and profound and simple. Sorry, Elvis, but Beyond Belief went out the window, and we immediately started looking for ways to incorporate this Hand Covers Bruise, I think it's called. This one little sketch became a triptych in the film, and it happens 2 other places, and I'll point those out. This is Johns Hopkins, by the way. We weren't able to shoot at Harvard, and at first I was extremely pissed off that Arthur Hiller got to shoot there and I couldn't. But in the end, I think I was happy about it because the buildings at Harvard are very, as beautiful as they are, and I do love the sort of decrepit nature of them and how they sort of list and crumble. And there was something about Johns Hopkins that allowed you to get, not only is it a stunning example of colonial architecture, but you can actually get a half a block away from the buildings. And so we did a lot of little matte paintings to add, landmarks. So you sort of knew, here's Lowell and here's Kirkland. But obviously the buildings are nothing like the Harvard campus. The Harvard campus is nowhere near as sort of homogeneous. It's way more cobbled together. You have colonial here, but you also have this very, they have the odd Gothic building here and there.
From Albrecht? Or do you think it's because all BU girls are bitches? For the record, she may look like a 34C, but she's getting all kinds of help from our friends at Victoria's Secret. She's a 34B, as in barely anything there. False advertising. The truth is, she has a nice face. I need to do something to take my mind off her. Easy enough, except I need an idea.
This stuff is really interesting to me. It's always really interesting to me how people do the things that they do. And again, you have to walk that very fine line between informing the audience of what the character is up to and boring them with a tutorial on how to hack. As I always said, making a police procedurals, it's not necessary that the audience take away from it how to do forensic investigation, but it's very important that it look like the lead characters in the movie know what they're doing. And this was definitely one of those things where we wanted to present hacking not as the, it's always been presented in movies as sort of caffeine-fueled, self-important naughtiness. And I wanted it to be more playful than that. I felt like, as it was described in the movie, he has to be masterful at what it is that he does, but it's really much more of a graffiti artist, really, than a seditious terrorist. I also felt that it was important for his character that he does feel people are overreacting when they, doesn't anybody have a sense of humor? He means that when he says it.
Next is Elliot. They're also open, but with no indexes on Apache. I can run an empty search and it returns all the images in the database in a single page. And I can save the page and Mozilla will save all the images for me. Excellent. Moving right along.
Excuse me, everybody. You are at one of the oldest, one of the most exclusive clubs. Not just
So a lot of people have taken umbrage with this notion that we've hyperbolized the Phoenix Club party. And in my research, and the people that I talk to, yeah, it's slightly sexed up in that we are making a movie about it, and it does have to open on a Friday night. But the actual pharmaceuticals that are being distributed and the verve with which they are partaken of, in my understanding, the people I talk to, I don't think it's hyperbolized at all. We are making a point here because it's an omniscient point of view. It's a party that has to be subjectively channeled through the people who are not invited. And the bus is not something that we made up. That's something that actually exists. And there are girls who do get bussed in. And I'm not so sure they're in this good a shape. And I'm not so sure they are this apt to disrobe. But from my understanding, that we're not that far off.
Done.
hey, what's going on?
Perfect timing. Eduardo's here and he's going to have the key ingredient.
Hey, Mark.
Eduardo,
You and Eric are split up.
how did you know that?
It's on your blog.
The irony of a character who creates the most successful and undeniable social networking tool and who is himself semi-asocial may be a creation of Aaron's. I certainly think that's his perspective on Mark and what the research that he did supported. I don't know whether he had a conclusion that he had drawn before he did the research, but the irony of that to me is quite a lot of the kind of the friction that creates the heat of the narrative. I never saw Jesse as Zuckerberg as somebody who was stopping there in terms of his characterization. I felt like in every moment that he was on screen and in every time he gets defensive or verbal or explains his side of things, it always seemed very human. And it never occurred to me when people started sort of saying, wow, it's such a nasty piece of character assassination. And this is maybe that I just know so many unsavory people, or I'm so unsavory myself. He never seemed that cruel or despicable to me. He just seemed very driven and clear about what it is that he wanted and how he was going to go about getting it.
Hey guys, check this out.
Someone go to the left because you left.
Look at these girls. Right or left?
Left is left. Yeah.
Right or left?
It's my roommate.
Oh my God, you're on the left.
This is pathetic.
Right.
Left.
Oh, shit. All right. He blogged about you. You don't want to read it.
And again, like the scene with Rooney where she finds out that he's blogged about her, she's so economical and I felt, watching her like this is somebody who was going to make a big impression in a, very short amount of screen time.
Awful lot of traffic. think maybe we shouldn't shut it down before we get into trouble?
I'm very proud of the fraternity of the outsider, you know, the feeling that you get from Andrew and from Joe and from Jesse and Patrick, and how they sort of work together to create this impression of people who are coexisting amongst huge piles of unwashed laundry. It just feels there's just a sense of this sort of sloppy, not only interplay, but kind of they're navigating each other so well without stepping on each other's feet, and it really does feel to me like that kind of camaraderie that only comes from living on top of people, forced proximity. The look on Jesse's face after Andrew says, "Oh God, we're in so much trouble now," and you cut to Jesse and he has that sort of impish look on his face like, so what? Isn't that the whole point, is to like kind of be naughty? And then you see it sink in for a second. He's like, oh, wait a minute. You know, I remember watching that as we were shooting, and he probably did it 12 or 13 times. And every time was just a little bit different, but you could just tell he had his fingers tightly around the throat of exactly what he was doing with this guy. And it's a great pleasure to watch somebody who is as skillful as Jesse Eisenberg is. He doesn't, I think, give himself the credit a lot of times because he's so much of a responder. He's not the kind of actor who wants to take center stage. He wants to react. But when you see him be this good for this many weeks in a row, and I remember he took me aside one point and said, you know, you would tell me if I, you know, was sucking ass. You would tell me if this was terrible. And I said, oh yeah, absolutely. You'd be the first to know. But I just kept thinking he was great.
Got 2,200 hits within 2 hours?
1,000.
What?
22,000.
You know, I know that the Winklevosses were world-class rowers, and this is a fairly ham-fisted introduction into who they are and what they're about. But it's one of those things where you kind of go, either we're going to get it in this one big, broad flourish with these guys yards out in front of the nearest competitor and trying to still be sort of respectful in that Harvard way about competition. It was a delicate thing, and I thought Army and Josh pulled it off really well. We looked for months to find two 6'5", 220-pound twins. And in the end, it got down to two guys. It was Army or it was Josh Pence. And I was kind of like, well, Army has more of that. I think he'll get away with the self-righteousness and the not comic entitlement of who these guys are. So I made an entreaty to Josh Pence, who, you know, been through the entire process of many, many, many screen tests. I finally said to him, will you please come and play with us, and can we lop your head off and put Army's head on your body? And he was a real sport. And aside from being a guy who could come up with ideas for what Tyler would be doing in the scene that would be different from what Cameron would be doing in the scene, Josh is one of the most adroit physical performers I've ever seen. I mean, his instincts about when to look or when to run his hands down the crease of his trousers or when to readjust himself or when to get bored. I mean, he's an astounding actor. And to have somebody who would be so generous to give us as many months of his time as he did to come in and kind of set the tone for who Tyler was a real find. A lot had been written about in the script about how he's always wearing flip-flops. Here he is, and he's got his Adidas flip-flops on. He's over here, and he has it. And you shoot a picture in widescreen, and you don't realize that you almost never see the guy's feet. So we got to this scene, and I thought, you know, there's such a great kind of you thing about meeting with the administrative board and in your flip-flops that the scene should begin with a shot of his flip-flops, and we tilt up from there. I also felt like his little foot tapping, which I explained to Jesse, was like the beginning of My Three Sons, and he didn't understand the reference, but Barry Livingston did. He did understand what I was talking about, the title sequence to My Three Sons, and that was kind of those two sets of wingtips and then the flip-flops just tapping away.
You deserve recognition.
I believe I pointed out some pretty gaping holes in your system.
Excuse me, may I?
Yes.
And I love Barry. He's got such a great, he's like a compassionate bureaucrat. You know, he's trying really hard to understand what the kids are up to. And yet he still has to be the fist of reason.
My dorm room window.
So,
6 months academic probation.
This is another situation where, you know, we're at Johns Hopkins and we found this little corner that we really liked, and we decided to place that shot there instead of, I mean, there's probably 15 or 20 places we could have done that at Harvard.
I know. How do you do this thing where you manage to get all girls to hate us? Why do I let you?
I know.
I can't do that.
Righto, I said I know.
Okay, let's look at a sample problem. Suppose we're given a computer with a 16-bit virtual address and a page size of 256 bytes. The system uses one-level page tables that start at address hex 400. Maybe you want DMA on your 16-bit system. Who knows?
Originally, when he opened the little piece of notebook paper, it said, and the studio was uncomfortable with the word. They didn't want to parade that in front of the MPAA because they felt we were already walking on eggshells. So they put that out, took that out, and put "you dick" on it, which doesn't have quite the same resonance for me.
That is correct. Does everybody see how he got there?
So there's a head replacement shot when Army taps Josh on the shoulder and he turns and comes forward. And we've put Army's face back onto Tyler's body here. And it was one of those things where, you know, there was just a couple of scenes, like this is a blue screen shot where you have the two of them conversing. But there was a lot of times where we wanted to see them doing dick stuff that twins do, you know, finishing each other's sentences and, you know, touching or pushing or whatever. And this technology allowed us to do that.
Yeah, I've got a minute.
Great. Here's another situation where when they're walking down the street about to go into the Porcellian, you know, we put Army's face onto Josh's body behind the sunglasses and he takes the sunglasses off, but they're so similar in terms of the way that they look. There were times when I would look at the composite and say, okay, well, I need to see it with Army's face in there. And say, oh, that is Army's face. And I would say, wow, really? You know, once you're out of the hairline and the cheekbones front and down, they're actually quite similar. So maybe there were tens of thousands of dollars worth of work that was unnecessary, but at least it was done impeccably.
You invented something in high school too, right?
An app for an MP3 player that recognizes your taste in music.
Maybe you're trying to buy it?
Microsoft.
I love Max Minghella. He came to us. He was obviously came in to read for another part, and we had read an enormous, probably 100 Indian actors who came in to read for Divya, and I saw footage of the actual Divya Narendra, who I've met now, and he's kind of like Warren Beatty. There's nothing. I mean, aside from being incredibly tan, there's almost nothing that seems particularly ethnic about him. He's really handsome. He reminds me a lot of Peter Dante, who's an actor that's in a lot of Adam Sandler movies. And we couldn't find somebody who had that sort of smoothness. I looked. We went to London. We went to, I think, Paris. We went to Montreal. We cast from everywhere. And finally, in the end, I just felt that Max had the most kind of, I just wanted to make sure that Divya was an equal. You know, he was the most important third wheel in this triumvirate. You know, neither Tyler nor Divya can move Cameron, and Cameron is the one that kind of is the leader in a way, but in their alliance, they had to be very powerful, and Tyler is sort of the brawn, and Divya was kind of the brains of the other half of the Winklevoss triumvirate. So Cameron is sort of in a lead position, and the other two guys are just trying to move him off. That means basically they spend the most of the movie trying to say, can we do this? Can we finally take this guy to court?
Called the Facebook then.
This doesn't need to be that difficult.
I'm currently in the middle of 2 different lawsuits.
Did you answer affirmatively when Tyler and Cameron Winklevoss and Divya Narendra asked you to build Harvard Connection? Did you say yes?
I said I'd help.
When did you approach Mr. Savrin with the idea for the Facebook?
I wouldn't say I approached him.
Sigh.
You can answer the question.
At a party at Alpha Epsilon Pi.
What's that?
The Jewish fraternity. It was Caribbean night.
So I have nothing against the Jewish fraternities of Harvard or Asian women, just for the record. And I'd like that to be heard as this scene plays behind. If anybody has an issue with that, take it up with Aaron Sorkin. His email address is...
I don't think it's that complicated. They're hot, they're smart, they're not Jewish, and they can't dance. Hey, Mark's here. Mark!
Andrew Garfield invented this little dance about take 3 or take 4 on his walkover. I thought, this guy's gonna be a movie star. It was just so, it's funny. It's funny and it's, you know, charming and self-effacing and relentlessly human. And that little move that Jesse does, the look on his face when he's both happy for his friend and utterly jealous is, I remember as we were shooting, I was like, wow. And it's such a quicksilver change from this pleased thing to the penny dropping in him understanding what that means in terms of the difference between them now. And it was pretty spectacular. This we shot at the Milton Academy. We just found this back door that seemed like it was, you know, off a general use hall or something. And it had the Harvard sodium vapor look that we were looking for.
Check out their friends, so why not build a website that offers that friends?
The breath in this is faked. Not that it wasn't ridiculously cold anyway, but we did not have the humidity that it required to have people's breath be visible. And I just felt to ask people to stand out in this kind of cold weather and not see the breath was unfair.
You would have to know the people on the site to get past your own page, like getting punched.
We were trying to find a piece of reggae music that we could all agree on would be kind of nerdy enough for a bad party, because the scene in the script is described as this really terrible party that Mark would prefer not to be at. It's only marginally more interesting for Eduardo to return to the party than it would be for him to freeze to death outside. So we were looking for a piece of music that would appropriately kind of encapsulate what we were trying to say about this party. And I think it was Bob Wagner came up with the idea of 10cc's, Dreadlock Holiday as it was called. And as we were looking for versions of it, because there's probably 12 or 15 different versions of it, we stumbled on the karaoke version, which I think was hands down considered to be the single worst version of 10cc's Dreadlock Holiday, and we went with that because we thought if you're going to do kind of cheeseball steel drums over it like that, you would bring in a soloist, a steel drum soloist to play over it. That the karaoke version was probably the most appropriate.
Jealous of Eduardo for getting punched by the Phoenix and began a plan to screw him out of a company I hadn't even invented yet.
Were you?
Gretchen. Jealous of Eduardo.
Oh, stop typing. We're off the record.
I know you've done your homework, and so you know that money isn't a big part of my life, but at the moment I could buy Mount Auburn Street, take the Phoenix Club, and turn it into my ping pong room.
I'll let you know how the party is.
So I love Jesse's walk. He worked a lot on this idea that the Mark was a fencer, but he also wanted to get this kind of not only good posture and sort of upright in terms of his posture, but it was also this being lost in his head, you know, this notion of somebody who's just so deep in thought that they don't realize that they're in the snow in flip-flops and they don't realize they're in cargo shorts, and they end up going from one place to the next, and it's only upon the arrival that they realize that they're freezing cold because they've been so completely not in their body.
To rehabilitate his image.
Again, there's a lot of little split screen stuff going on here where the Winklevoss are you know, stacked up one on another. There's a great little reaction here to David Selby's inquiry here, and Andrew gets his little snipe off, and the Winklevosses respond, and it's just some really lovely little like roto split screen stuff.
How would you know? You weren't even there.
Were you aware?
And David Selby was another, you know, both John Getz and David Selby did us a solid. They came to read. They were actors that we knew, that we asked coming for the read-through, and David played the attorney and John played the other attorney, and we were kind of like, wow, those guys were great. Let's just get them. A lot of times, Lorraine, I'm convinced, has already precast the movie, and she's just waiting for me to come around. So she'll put people sort of in my way, and I'll go, oh, well, it'd be a great idea. She's, oh, that. I never thought of that. That would be really smart to do it that way, Dave.
Class. For Mark Zuckerberg to Tyler and Cameron Winklevoss, December 10, 2003. This week has been pretty busy thus far with classes and work, so I think it's probably best to postpone the meeting.
I'm also really busy tomorrow. Okay, anybody else feel like there's something up with this guy?
Tell him okay. But we do have to make sure that we meet up before we all go off for break.
I know. Yeah, watch out.
I will say that one of the things that made this movie possible was the ability to shoot actors typing at laptops and desktops that just had blue on them, because they never had to worry about whether or not what they were typing was real or real coding, and you know, all the actors really learned kind of where their fingers were required in order to do what they're supposed to look like they're doing. But if we'd had to teach them how to do a lot of the stuff that we see them do, it would have just been a nightmare. So there's hundreds of composites in this movie of the different screens that people are working on. And it was an odd thing, because the first cut of the movie, as I was watching it, I was so aware of the fact that they weren't doing anything and that their computers weren't in any way like connected to the outside world. They were just pantomiming in front of a blue computer, and I was like, oh God, this looks so stupid. And when these screens started coming in, and there's hundreds of them, I mean, in the depositions there's, you know, all of the stenographers' stuff is actually, they're typing exactly what's being said. And when you finally put all the screens up and you see the Harvard Crimson and you see the Harvard email system and you see the, you know, Emacs and you see the scripting programs that they're using, it was like an unbelievable sigh of relief. I was like, oh, it doesn't look stupid anymore. And we had a consultant that worked with us, Paul McReynolds, who did an amazing, thorough job of going through the script and saying, this is stupid what they're saying here. They should be saying this, or this is what we would be seeing. And he caught stuff where he would generate code writing, and then he would go except this version of the software is 2 years later than what you're looking for. You're looking for this version, and the only difference is that in this little section of the scroll. So we would go back in and retouch all of those frames so that if Paul signed off on it, then we were golden. Like just the Network Solutions, just to see it be the actual Network Solutions webpage and to see thefacebook.com. Maybe most people don't get the same thrill out of that I do, but I think it's good that it's kind of steeped as much in reality as it can be.
What world is this? Hey Cameron, I'm still a little skeptical that we have enough functionality in the site to really draw the attention and gain the critical mass necessary to get a site like this to run. We'll speak soon?
This is the first time he mentioned any problem.
Yes, it was.
You sent 36 emails.
This is just something that Jesse did on the day. He was writing something. I don't know what he was writing on his legal pad. And when we got to the end of the scene, he just raised the page up, and I realized he'd been doing doodles the whole time. And I was like, that's a genius idea. And he was like, oh, well, I can raise the page at the end and you can see it. So no, just do it, just write. You just draw little pictures in tanks or whatever you want to do. And at the end of it, you can just raise the picture up, or we can see you spin the pad. Something that lets us know that you are less than interested in what these guys are saying about you. That Aaron, he's